What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another video, and today I've got the pleasure of sharing with you the legacy horn from Streamtechmusic. So in case you're unaware, Streamtechmusic is created by Maxime Loift, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing it again, Maxime. But Maxime has worked with orchestral tools in the past, creating the Majestic horn, which was available for €2, and I believe is still available. And so this is the follow-up sort of full version of that library called the Legacy horn, which is a pretty interesting title. But yeah, so let's kind of get into this library a little bit, and then we'll explore it a bit in Logic as well. So here you can see it's available currently for pre-order at €59, regular price €99. And yeah, basically it's a very simple interface, quite reminiscent of Audio Imperia's interface, if I can say so myself, with these mic positions and pretty simple knob in the middle. Then we have some of the details. And in terms of the size, it's actually quite large. I believe it's about 20 gigabytes. So it really is a hefty library. And so you have a ton of different articulations, mainly the flagship ones or sort of the default ones you would have for your typical writing. And then there are two types of legato, which is pretty cool. Regular legato and runs legato up to a fifth interval, and that is triggered by velocity. So the harder you play above a certain threshold, you get the runs transitions. And then some other articulations here as well, which you can see, plus some multi-tonguing, which is pretty cool, and some reverb presets, however you want to set it up. And in terms of the patch listing, it's very, very simple, right? And then here are the system requirements. So with that being said, let's kind of take a look at the library itself. Here you can see in Kontakt, it is available only for Kontakt Full. So if you don't have that, if you only have the Kontakt player, this library will currently not run in the Kontakt player. Maxime is very open to different types of feedback though. So people have said, I wish it was in Kontakt player, and he is taking that into account. Whether that is to be seen or not, whether he ports it over to player, that will remain to be seen. But at the moment, it's only available for the full version of Kontakt. And then here you can see inside is very, very simple, right? We have the instruments folder, which only contains the legacy horn patch itself. And then there's some other patches here as well, which has a high quality mode, but it takes up more CPU. And by default, the patch loads up with legato activated. If you don't want it, you can just press the button again and you get regular sustains. But for the sake of this video, we'll just leave it on legato mode. We have different mic positions, spot 1, spot 2, outrigger, and surround. But personally, it loads up by tree, loads up with tree, and I personally really like that position the most. And then we'll start with legato, and then we'll go to the other articulations a little bit as well. But let's start with some legato, and I will share my thoughts after that. Here we go. All right, so first impressions, just a beautiful sound. And I'm not just saying that because there are a lot of libraries that are recorded and they just don't really have a high fidelity sound. And this is not even the high quality patch, right? This is just the main patch that comes with the library, and it sounds full, it sounds rich. And I think the reverb built in has a lot to do with that as well. It kind of fills up the stereo spectrum a little bit more, which is really pretty. Yeah, and then the legato itself is very smooth, very buttery. I did come across an issue with my initial testing of this library when Maxime sent it over. Big thanks to Maxime, by the way, for sharing this with me. That some of the legato transitions in the lower dynamics were popping out a little high. And obviously, that's a bit distracting, right? If you have really quiet sustains and then there's a legato transition that comes up at like forte and then it settles back into a piano sustain after that, obviously the listener is going to notice that. However, Maxime advised me to play really lightly, so with a low velocity, which could allow the engine room to smooth out the legato a little bit and make it less bumpy. So let me just play a little bit more in the pianissimo piano registers, and let's see if we can make the legato super smooth by playing at low velocities. Right, so it's really at the onset of a new note. Like when you play an initial note and then you follow it up with a subsequent note, that's when you really hear the legato start to bump up a little bit. So I mentioned that to Messim, and he mentioned that he would consider putting in like a legato volume slider or knob for the individual dynamic layers, which is a really cool idea, actually. I think that would add a lot of flexibility. And then the other thing is for the runs legato, which is a great option to have. Currently, that's only activated through velocity. So if we take a look at the advanced page here, we can see that the runs legato happens above 81, right? 81 to 127. Of course, you can adjust that. But if we had the option for the runs legato to be triggered via playing speed, similar to the Cinematic Studio series, I think that would be a really cool option to have. I'm currently used to the Cinematic Studio stuff a lot, and when you play harder, but you also play faster, you get that faster legato speed kind of coming in. So I think the legato speed the playing speed to activate the runs legato could be a really cool option to have as well. And Maxime said he would take that on board as a possible update. So that's pretty cool too. All right, then we have a bunch of like different crescendos and effects and stuff, multi-tonguing, but let's kind of go through these other longs and shorts as well first. So muted, and then flutter, and then trill, performance patch, which combines sustains and staccatos, and then we'll hear the dedicated short notes as well. So here's the muted. Yeah, you can see I'm not really well practiced with this performance patch. I think if you do use the performance patch, you would need to kind of go back in and edit it just to make sure you have all the shorts activating the right articulations as you want. And of course, the velocity will kind of impact the dynamic at which that note speaks as well. So I tend to go in, even if my performance is really solid on the first take, I tend to go back in and just re-edit the notes a little bit just to make sure everything is triggering properly. Let's move on to the staccatissimo, and then the staccato, muted staccato, and marcato. Okay, so the marcato is pretty cool too. So the initial note that you press will have a bigger attack, and then if you hold the note will basically just disappear like a regular marcato. But if you follow that up with another note in close succession, then it's going to trigger the regular legato after that. So if you want to play a phrase, but with a slightly accented note at the very beginning, using the marcato might work really well. So Maxime actually told me that this library was inspired a lot by the Cinematic Studio series, and I can kind of see why. There's a little bit of overlap in the programming and all that, which is pretty cool. Okay, let's hear some of these dynamics here. And these are, of course, really cool to have because it's a lot more realistic to use pre-recorded performances in terms of these swells and dynamics rather than just programming them yourself, right? You can always ride up and down the mod wheel to trigger those different dynamic layers, but if you have a real-time performance of it, then it's going to give you better results 100% of the time, I think. So let's have a quick listen to these crescendos. Beautiful. And you can see there's an option here for tempo sync as well. So if you have that activated, you can basically set your DAW to whatever tempo you want, and the tempo sync should, or the library should, follow along with these repetitions. Again, very similar to Cinematic Studio Brass in that functionality there. So yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is that I really do like the dynamic range that this library contains. Again, another thing that the Cinematic Studio series offers as well. Very large dynamic range, especially in the brass library. And this one, especially focusing on the solo horn, I like that you get a slightly closer, more intimate sound compared to CSB. This was recorded in a smaller studio compared to like a concert hall or a big scoring stage. And Maxime also set up these different mic positions in case you want to shape your sound a little bit more. But overall, I really like the out-of-the-box sound. It's very warm, it's very clear, and even in the highest dynamics, the library isn't grating and super harsh. Like you can hear the intensity and the grit that's being like put into the samples through the performer, but the sound is carefully crafted in a way that makes it very pleasing to the ear in all dynamic layers, in my opinion at least. So I think for me, my workhorse articulation would definitely be the legato, especially for legato lines, melodic lines that need sort of an exposed solo context. I really like the softer dynamic layers, as that's where I usually write my melodic lines for the horn. So with that being said, let me just play one of the best themes of all time using the solo horn, and let's see how it pulls it off. Sorry, I think I forgot the second half of the theme there a little bit, but I think it handled it really, really well. I would say to me it's like it hits a 9 out of 10 quite easily in terms of realism and replicating the melody, especially if you have like a background of strings and other instrumentation going on. It can kind of let the horn blend in any discrepancies it might have with a legato or anything else. So it's really, really pretty. One more thing I forgot to mention, I really do like the subtle vibrato that happens when you hold one, some of the sustains a little bit longer. It adds that human element to it, which is really cool. And yeah, the overall thing just sounds quite natural and very warm, very comforting, as I already mentioned. So I really do enjoy this library, and I could definitely see myself using it as my go-to library for solo horn writing. I think currently I'm still using like CSB and even Cinebrass, the solo horn from there, but this one has a rounder sound and um, not quite as like covered up or masked as the Cinebrass one. That one is beautiful as well, but this one is slightly clearer and slightly more direct while not being overly harsh or anything like that. So I think Maxime really has captured something magical here. Of course, no library is perfect. As I mentioned, I would have loved to have, the runs legato triggered by playing speed, in addition to the velocity. That would be really, really cool. And again, at the very lowest dynamic, some of the legato transitions kind of poke out a little bit. So it'd be nice to have like a legato volume knob for those lowest dynamics, and maybe you can assign the legato transition volume for each dynamic layer. That could be a really cool addition as well. But those are just two little nitpicks. Let me know if you agree or disagree. But again, thank you to Maxime for putting this together and for sharing a copy with me. Always appreciate it. And let me know your thoughts about this library as well down in the comments below. I'd love to hear, what you like about it, maybe what you think could be improved as well, and if you would consider picking up this library to support Streamtechmusic as well. So in any case, if you want to see my full composing process, you're interested in how I write music from start to finish, I'd love to give you free access to my workshop down below in the description box. I call it the Complete Composer's Framework, and it basically walks through step by step how I go through from the inception of an idea all the way to a polished final master, and I outline every single step along the way so you can see how I actually create music from start to finish. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video, and I'll see you there. Take care.